Morning. Welcome to our conversation today between Alexandra Stefancich, who is the community educator from the Sierra Foothill Research and Extension Center, run by the University of California Agriculture and Natural Resources Division, and Meyo Marrufo, who is Eastern Pomo from the Robinson Rancheria Band of Pomo Indians. And she's also the director of the Environmental Protection Agency for the Giddyville Band of Pomo Indians, and also the Region 9 Regional Tribal Operation Committee. This is where my writing's gone wrong. Meyo, tell me the other two representations you hold for the state and also at the national level.
Okay, so it is the Regional Tribal Operations Committee for Region 9. I'm the Central California representative. And on the National Tribal Caucus for US EPA, I am the California State representative.
Excellent. And we really appreciate you giving us some time today. So
yeah.
Ali and Meyo, I'm going to hand over to you guys now for a conversation about our human relationship with fire.
Yeah. Meyo, I remember when we last talked, you used the term pyro agriculture a lot. And I was just wondering if we could start off by you explaining what pyro agriculture is and what that would have looked like.
Okay, so pyro agriculture, and as I always say when I talk, this is my truth. This isn't anybody else's truth. These are things that I've learned. This is not textbook learned or anything like that. This is, there are people with other opinions, so this is mine. How's that? Pyro agriculture to me is the use of fire to promote agriculture health. When we last talked about it, we were talking about the acorn trees. We were talking about the mushrooms gathering areas. We were talking about some of the staple foods of Pomo country. And when I say pyro agriculture, it is the specific use of fire in those areas to promote the health of what we are gathering.
Yeah, great. So pyro agriculture, I'm assuming a lot of the fire setting was intentional. So I'm just kind of curious if you can explain some of the techniques that you used for lighting fires, choosing where to burn, or how you kind of controlled fire size, because I know you spoke to that a little bit as well.
So the fires in the oak woodlands and the fires, all fire management is very different. The first thing is knowing where you are. So fire management in Miwok country is going to be very different from fire management in Hoopa, which is going to be very different with fire management in Pomo country. In Pomo country, we have across our entire region, we have lake, valley, and coast. Coast is mostly forest, so their fire management is different. Lake County, the fire management would be in the oak woodlands, but it'd also be down on the lake shore. Here in the valley, the fire management is in the oak woodlands also. So we're gonna talk about kind of the oak woodlands area, which is grasslands, partially scrub oaks. So when you're looking at fire management, when you're looking at setting a fire, the first thing you're going to be looking at is what is the fuel load of where you're setting the fires. So if we looked at where the gullies are, natural stream beds, where the chaparral line is, when you hit up to, and when you go up into the chaparral, there's actually kind of a natural 3 or 4 foot buffer that is created by the chaparral. Once you get up there, you can see that it starts to become more dirt with plants. It's less grassy. And so there's kind of a natural line before you hit those hardwoods of manzanita. And there's more grasses available. So you're going to be looking at kind of the area. Are there natural buffers? Do you have enough people to possibly put out a fire if you need to? Because you're not going to just like set it and just go, wee, you know, let it burn, you know. You're going to set it, and you're going to want to set it with parameters. You're going to have to find a way to put it out. If it goes beyond the borders, are you going to be able to control this fire? If you're going to be starting a large grassland fire, you're going to definitely look at the fuel loads on the lower edge of all the oaks. You're going to see, because what you want is a low temperature, fast moving fire. You don't want a high temperature, slow moving, because then it harms the oaks that you're actually trying to clean under. Mm-hmm. So you're going to look at you're going to look at the topography of where you are. You're going to look for stream beds, because those usually don't have plants in the middle. And so it creates like this natural barrier. You're going to have gullies. The gullies go down. And so you're able to control the fire because it V's, and you can put it out at the bottom. So you're going to look at the topography of where you are.
Yeah. Yeah, this is great. And I mean, it really does sound, it's basically the same as people who are considering doing prescribed burning today, you know, thinking about all those same things. And I think, you know, as we had talked before, you were like, all these people have this funny conception that like when we were using fire, that we were just running around lighting things like mad, you know, without thinking about it and planning it out. But yeah, as you talk to us about it, it's definitely like a thorough thought out process with a deep understanding of the land and how to work with each different individual place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is very different, because what you're looking at, what people are thinking is, the general conception, you're right, is that we ran around lighting fires. But you have to look at what fire management is for. Fire management is for the health of your food. We are not going to destroy our food source. It's not like we could have ran to Safeways, you know, oh, darn, we burned up all of our acorns. Where are we going to go? Let's run to Safeways, go grab some more. You know, you're not doing that. You're maintaining the health of the tree so that you can actually gather more from the tree, because the acorn is your staple food. It's not a condiment. It's not ketchup. You know, it's the staple of what you're eating. And the majority of, you know, you're collecting 1,000 pounds at a time. So you're not going to just say, oh, darn, the whole grove caught on fire. So my bad, you know, because you're going to wipe out your tribe's food source. So no, it is very thought out. And I think the misconception out there is that, you know, that it wasn't thought out, that there's a difference between prescribed burns and traditional fire management. And there's not.
Mm-hmm.
Ali, could I just ask as well, Meyo, as you have just described, it sounds to me like you have very direct experience yourself of being involved in these burns. Am I right in saying that?
On a smaller sense. On a smaller sense, because a lot of, you know, on a smaller sense for just a tiny area. But I am also, because I'm California State Representative in Environmental, I talk to a lot of other tribal environmental programs, and they are moving back to traditional fire management. And the problem that they are facing is that they are, in order to, if we want to go talk about this, is that okay? So in order to go back to fire management, you have to take out all of the fuel load, because otherwise what you're doing is you're creating a hotter, slower fire. And a hotter, slower fire is what we're all experiencing right now. Instead of just sweeping through the grass, we're having, there's all the underbrush that is built up over the years. There's all of the deadwood, the widowmaker limbs and everything that are dead limbs on the trees. There's all of those things that are there now. So the environmental departments, when we are going through and saying, okay, what we want to do is get back to traditional ecological knowledge, and we want to start using firescaping, and we want to start using, our fire management protocols. And we're looking at them, and we're going out, and we're looking at, say, the Washos are doing a marsh. And I got to tour it, and I forgot the name of the marsh exactly, but it's in Tahoe City. And they have this beautiful marsh, but they have to take out probably about 10 truckloads of stuff, if not more, just to get it to a point where they can actually set a fire without burning down the whole forest. Because of that fuel load that's there. And when I talk about a fast moving fire and a slow moving fire, so what we're doing right now is we have slow moving fires. Yes, they're spreading really fast right now. When you look at the Willits area, when you look at the Covelo area, Glenn County and everything, they're spreading faster is because they're hotter fires. Fast moving, low temperature is grass. So basically you're going to get a nice sweeping fire that goes through, clears all the understory out, and it doesn't light the trees on fire because it's moving so fast and it's not hot enough. And it creates this wonderful smoke for the trees, which, kind of like an antiseptic on the trees, because that smoke is good for it. When you have a higher fuel loads, what it does is it slows the fire down because it's catching the twigs, then it's catching the branches, then it's catching the trees. So it's no longer this fast moving, low temperature fire. It is slowed down, it's becoming a higher temperature. Once you get to that higher temperature, then you're going to go up into the chaparral where you hit hardwoods. So no longer is it oak and pine, kind of softer woods. It's hitting the hardwoods like manzanitas, madrones, things like that. And it's becoming even hotter. So it goes up like it did at, the Hopland Research Center. And it did at Pepperwood Preserves. It went up like in the back of my house where I was evacuated from. It goes up, hits that hardwoods, comes back down and burns the root substructure of everything. And so it ends up just wiping the whole area out. So it's no longer gatherable. You can't gather in it. You can't get anything to eat off of it. You have to wait for it to return.
Yeah. And so in thinking about, we've had this buildup of fuels that's taken so much time. And obviously there's a lot that we'll have to do to get back to where we can use fire without negative consequences. But I'm just curious how often, I know it'd be variable depending on the individual site and what you were using it for, but how often were many places burned? Was it annually, every few years? I know there's probably, each different location had a different burn frequency depending on how you used it. Yeah. It's just like a general.
So there's no real general answer to that.
Yeah.
Other than to say 2 to 4 years.
Yeah.
Because when you burn, it takes a year to bring it back to health, and then it takes another year for it to grow high enough to be a problem again. So when you see, and we're not talking about the wiped out areas along Cache Creek, because that's like a 10-year recovery. We're talking about just a quick grass fire. So the grasses burn down, and then they go through, so we're assuming that happens in summer. Grasses burn down, water comes in the winter, smaller native grasses are growing. The different ones, you know, tarweed, brome grass, in the different layers of prairie grass, it's coming back, and then it grows, and you gather. And then about the next year, you start looking at, okay, it's kind of getting long now, it's kind of getting tall. You know, what do we need to do this? It's not an every year thing. Nobody wants to fight fire every year, you know, but you want to take the understory out when it starts getting dangerous. When it starts getting, okay, this is too long. I can't see the acorns anymore. It's created a bedding underneath to where I'm having to dig for these things now, under the leaves, under the grasses and stuff. Time to burn. And that can take anywhere from 2 to 4 years.
Yeah. Yeah. And that 2 to 4 years is such a big difference than, you know, the 50 plus years
Yeah.
that we're experiencing now. I'm curious, just kind of on a personal level, you know, our state right now, we've burned over 2 million acres so far this year. I'm just curious, I have this feeling like I get frustrated about this because I feel like this is a solvable problem. Like if we took care of our environment, that we could fix this. You know, we could be more resilient to the changes that are going to come from climate change. So I'm just kind of curious, you know, in thinking about the fire problems the state's experiencing, like just what, you know, what are your thoughts on it? Are you feeling, you know, is it kind of like good pressure to like get back to traditional land management? Or
I think that I first of all, what I want to tell you is that we have gone through catastrophic fires before. Our redwoods, our oak trees, any of the major trees that are older, when you cut them, you can see where there's been fires that happened. So, you know, the redwoods lived through major fires before because of, and that's what that beautiful bark that you see on the outside of the trees, that's what that's for, so that they can live through those fires. Oak trees have lived through, sorry, just seeing who's here. Oak trees have lived through fires also. So when you're thinking about what's happening right now, you know, major fires happen. They do. You know, sometimes you need to just go through and cleanse. The problem that we're having right now is the structures that are going down. Because we have more people, those major fires are impacting. You know, when it gets to like the Mendocino National Forest, that's secondary to put out. The first part they were going to put out is the houses, is all of the structures around it. You know, and it's actually those structures that are making it a hotter fire, because not because the structures are burning down, but because of all the crap around it and all of the different plants around it and all of the oils and everything else around it. You know, so do we want to move back to traditional ecological management? I think that's all of our goals. You know, I think that that's the only way that we're going to be able to manage what we have. But we also need to take into account that these types of things do happen, and they have happened over the years. So rather than there's a lot of people going, you know, if we had fire management, it wouldn't be as bad. Well, if we didn't have 8 billion people in the world, it wouldn't be as bad either. You know, if we didn't have power lines running through forests, it wouldn't be as bad either. But we're having to deal with what's happening now. And that's kind of the hard part, where I see a lot of people. Would traditional fire management help this? Yes. Would it stop it? Not necessarily. And there would be a point where, you know, in the forest, if it was a good fire, yeah, but they've been burned out before. And so have we in Lake County, and so have we here. You know, we've been burned out before because our trees have shown us that. You know, our heartwoods show us that it has been burns in the past couple of 100 years. You know, so fire management would lessen the impact. I think it would be smarter for the people that have the structures around, you know, that 100-foot barrier, you know, 50-foot, 100-foot, if people followed that. In areas where there is traditional gathering, fire management would help that because it'd be less of an impact when the fire does go through.
Mm-hmm.
Because it would burn faster and burn through it so that it wouldn't be so much damage to the trees themselves. Yes, would it stop it all? No.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
I don't want people to get the idea that we as Native people are going to take responsibility for the fires that happen. And because when they say, well, we were using those California Indians fire management techniques, how come it didn't work? You know, because catastrophes happen.
Yeah.
You know, this is just a way to get through it a little more unscathed. How's that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And I think, you know, it's such an interesting conundrum. I know that right now in California, only about 20,000 acres every year are burned using prescribed burning. And obviously there's a lot of people who are trying to think about how to scale up our land management, you know, how to get more folks involved. And there's a lot of barriers, you know, in the different environmental, you know, you have to get a CEQA, you have to get an okay from your CAL FIRE person. All these things have to be perfect. And then when you think about the firefighting, you know, they don't really have to like fill out a form before they drop, you know, thousands of gallons of retardant on an area. So it's just interesting to think about like what processes we should be supporting or making easier, and what kind of things, you know, are a little bit possibly too easy to do.
I think the biggest thing right now is to teach people the different types of fires, because I think what is going on is that people are equating fire management with arson. They're looking at it as we're going out and creating these fires, and oh, those Indians love fires, you know, they dance around them, they do this and that around them, and it's not the same thing. You know, that's one of the problems that we're having for the privatized land ownership, is that when we want to go out and do burning on certain plants, they're thinking we're trying to destroy them. And it's not destroying them. It's actually making them healthier, because it's giving them room to grow, and you're actually going to get a healthier plant. And that's the part that needs to be taught more.
Mm-hmm.
You know, this is not random fire setting. This is not, you know, walking around with one of those fire dragons, the little torch things, and just running through. You know, I feel like what I often think people are thinking is that we're like the movie The Croods, when they first discover fire, and they're like, oh, look at the little fire, oh, run with it, and then everything goes up in a blaze. That's not what's happening. You know, first of all, you know, it's the adults that are involved. It's not the children that are involved. It's thought out. It's decided on where it's going to be. It's, you know, is it going to have an impact on the health of our food sources? Is it going to have an impact? Is it near our villages? Is there a possibility of our villages being set on fire? Because that, you know what, our houses are tule and our houses are bark. You know, we're not going to randomly set fires that are going to burn our villages down. You know, and I think that's what people think. You know, it kind of, you know, whenever you bring fire management up or whenever you talk fire management, people are just like, you know, they kind of roll their eyes and they think, you know, well, we do prescribed burning. Well, this isn't just prescribed burning. This is a larger scale of prescribed burning. And this is also adding in the inherent knowledge of what plant life is there and the use of it. And that's very different from prescribed burning. Prescribed burning is going out there and taking a fuel load down. This is taking a fuel load down and also maintaining the health of the native plants that are there. And I think what people miss.
Mm-hmm. Can you give an example? I know you spoke a lot about several plants when we were on the tour of the Hopland Wreck. I was wondering if you could give an example of one or two plants that specifically need fire and how fire impacts them.
Well, I personally think that our oak trees need fire.
Yeah.
That's my own personal opinion, though, because I think that's one of the reasons why the sudden oak pathogen is so rampant right now. Sudden oak death is so rampant is because we don't have fire management. I think that the smoke from the grass fires create. God, I don't know. I think it creates like a Band-Aid onto our oaks. It creates an antiseptic wash. It's like that after you use makeup remover and just kind of take it all off. And, you know, I think that's what fire does to our oaks. You know, you look at the way, think about it like this. And then we'll get into the mushrooms. But think about it like this. When you smudge, if you've ever seen anybody smudge themselves, what are they doing? They're bathing themselves in the smoke because they're drawing that smoke onto them. And that's, to me, what the grass fires do for the oaks. It smudges them down, but there's also reasonings for those smudges. There's also, you know, antimicrobials and antibacterials that go into those also, you know, that we're finding out. It's, you know, it's, to me, it's a good thing. The other thing we're talking about was the mushrooms that were up there. When we were walking around, we were seeing areas that were really clear and nice and clear, and there showed fire damage on the madrones and fire damage on the trees near. And it was like, well, why? Well, guess what? You know what? Mushrooms love nitrogen. Mushrooms love this and that. And those, you know, the fire going in actually helps all those mushroom areas. When you look at, you know, and yeah, it becomes a natural place to gather because guess what? You light it up and you got all these empty spaces and all those. That was actually a really nice walk. Folks, if you have a chance. But the other plants that it helps are the prairie grasses, because some of those seeds need, they need different things to happen before they actually go into bloom or they actually germinate. Excuse me, sorry, forgetting my words. But when you have the grass fires go through, so you take down all of the understory, all the seeds are scattered. So you have 2 good years of really, you have your tarweed come up, you have your brome grass come up, and they actually come up in their layers. And you see, you get to learn when they are ready. And by that, you get to learn their growing paths. And that's important too, because that impacts the people the most. That's the best thing you can do, is watch how a plant grows and watch how it comes to seed and know when it's ready. And you can really only see that after you've taken down your understory as much, because otherwise you see it just a bunch of grass and then you see a tarweed come up, and then you can see the different layers if you know what you're looking for.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't, this is a good way to start learning how to do it, because you watch it go from the bottom up.
Yeah. Yeah, great. Yeah, I feel like you just shared so much with us. Hannah, did you have another question to add?
So, Meyo, I am interested. So one of the things you've been so wonderful in helping us with is guiding us as we develop curriculum for middle schoolers around fire science. And that's looking at both the ecology of fire, the physics of it, and then how we can be more fire prepared. So as you've been talking today, you know, we've touched on a few times about these different kind of relationships that different people have with fire. And when we go into a middle school classroom, we normally start by asking them to just write a few words down of how they're feeling about fire. And you get a real mixed bag of everything from s'mores and, you know, happy gatherings they've had, and to evacuating, being afraid. And I was just wondering what your feelings are about, as we have to change the relationship with fire so that we can accept all these different roles it plays. How can we work with our young people through that process?
I want to say the first thing is that they need to learn how to respect fire. There's a heck of a lot of kids in this world that have never camped. They've never seen fire outdoors. They've never seen fire outside of their stove. You know, they've never seen fire outside of a fireplace. And I think not, take them out in the woods and set a fire. Not quite. But I think what kids see now is controlled fire, or totally uncontrolled fire. There's no kind of happy medium. They've never seen a natural fire. They've never seen, you know, a good fire outside that, you know, a bonfire. You know, there's this, you're either scared of it, or you're right, like it evokes s'mores, it evokes happier times, but not having that in between creates arsonists, because they don't understand it, or they think they understand it because they have a skewed sense of what fire is. And I think showing kids that fire is your friend, no, but showing them that adults think things out, and adults try and manage land with fire, and this is how. You know, that instead of just having a fire impact their lives one particular way, show them a broader sense of what fire can do. You know, because there's a lot of, my son is one of them, you know, evacuated out of our house for 9 days and watched the fire come near our house. We had to go back and basically talk to him about not being scared of it, you know, and to reteach that. And it took, hey, you know what, we're gonna go start a fire. Come on, let's go start a fire that we can control, but you understand that I understand what it is, you know. And make friends with it. It's a kind of a silly thing, but you know, because I don't want to tell young people, oh, go out and set a fire, because that's not it, you know. But I think it's not teaching the children about fire as much as it's teaching the adults around them to integrate their children in this learning process, you know.
Yeah. I think one of the things we've learned as we've gone through this process, because some of the lessons do include students working with models of fire, using fire, and often folks are alarmed at that. But one of the things that Ali's discovered in her research is there are studies to prove that the more young people learn about what a fire needs, then the less likely they actually are to go out and become an arsonist or to use it in a way that's dangerous.
Yeah, I firmly believe that. You know, you get a healthy respect of something, then you tend not to want to abuse it. You know, it's the same thing with firearms. You know, there's a difference between, you know, some of the more rural areas that have guns hanging above their doors still, you know, because they're using it for hunting and they're not going out and playing, you know, video games that show everything, you know, killing and this and that, but they're actually eating what they kill. You know, it becomes more of, oh, this is a tool. And that's what fire is. Fire is a tool. You know, it's we need a healthy respect of it, but it's a tool that Creator gave us to manage. You know, and every once in a while, Creator will teach us a lesson like we do now. But, you know, in the end, it's a tool for us to manage. And the sooner we start figuring out or relearning or revitalizing our past knowledge, the healthier we're going to be, because when catastrophic things like this happen, we won't be as scared. You know, so.
Well, Ali, do you have anything else to add?
No, I don't. Thank you so much, Meyo, for taking the time to chat with us today. It's truly helpful, both for Hannah and I as we create this curriculum to then share with folks, and also for the teachers who are able to watch it and learn more so that they can feel empowered as they teach their students about fire too.
Yeah. Well, I hope I answered some questions. I hope that whoever watches this learns a little bit more, understanding that this is one person's opinion, and each of the regions of Indian country have very different views because we have very different environments. So I'm talking specifically about the oak shrublands and grasslands. I don't speak for the forest people, and I don't speak for the desert people or the ocean people, you know. So what I speak to is where I work and where I live, you know. So I would encourage anybody who is outside of this area to seek the knowledge of what the people there are doing with fire.
Yeah. And I mean, that's the wonderful thing about California, right? We have such a diversity of ecosystems. So I'm sure that land practices everywhere around the state were wildly different given the different parameters of